Hello and welcome to the House of Strength podcast. Today is our second episode in a series that we're doing with Maureen Best from LEAP and some of our local farmers here in the Roanoke, Virginia area. And today we're joined by Glenn, or GW, as he is known by his friends. And Glenn is the owner of Green Acres Farm out in Buchanan, which is in Botetourt County. And Glenn, that's where I'm from, so it's good to have somebody from home. Yeah. So thank you guys for joining us, and for everybody listening, this is going to be another really cool episode. We're going to talk about eating local and organic farming, things like that. So we're going to jump right into it. So GW, won't you tell us, I know I've read on your bio, on you guys' website, that you came back to the area and started your own farm. So what were some of the decisions in that thought process of where you wanted to put it, why you were going to do it the way you did it?
Well, I was raised on a farm,
Okay.
third generation, and we raised produce locally, sold to the Kroger people up in Glenver. And I was forced labor at that time. I did like hoeing corn, pulling weeds, and so I went out on my own. When I went in the Air Force, and when I got out, I just figured I'd go to school, and I ended up in the transportation industry. Burned out on that after about 18 years. Started a retail store in Charlotte, North Carolina, and wanted to move back home. When my son was born, Charlotte was exploding, and we decided to move back up to Virginia, where it was a little slower paced. And if he wanted to go to the city when he got old enough, he could go. So we came back and we bought 50 acres of land. At that time we had a ladies' clothing store, and we sold a little mom and pop thing. We sold that business and moved up here and bought 50 acres of land. My dad wouldn't let me build on our farm. It makes property taxes go up too much. So after he's retired, they raise beef cattle is all now. So in 2000, I had 2 heart attacks. I was 50 years old. And I had been eating vegetables and stuff. I grew up on a farm and I knew what to eat. So I got to looking into what we ate. And boy, was I frightened. It was appalling. And so I decided the only way I eat a lot of chicken. With the heart problems, I ended up with a triple bypass. I took an artery out of my arm and made new arteries. I'm as healthy now, I guess, as I was way before that day. But back to the food, the only way I could get food, the way I would like to have it, was either drive 100 miles and buy from a friend of mine now, my mentor, in Stanton, or start raising my own chickens. And my nephew, I called him up one day and said, "You want to raise chickens?" And he said, "Well," and so we decided to. And this is our 3rd year. Okay. In our first year, we raised 800 chickens and sold them all. Wow. In our 2nd year, we raised close to 1,400. And this year, we have ordered 2,700.
Oh my gosh.
So, and we're right on target. Now, last year and this year both, the Chinese people had a problem with avian flu, and they came over here and bought every chick they could get their hands on both years. So my orders were always 2-3 weeks late. We start in March and stop in October. And so that's been a problem both years, but we're still on target to do our 2,700.
That's incredible growth, and that's really awesome, and that's a fascinating story, about how you got to where you are too. So I guess a couple of questions on that. You said that what you found that you were eating was scary. Now, when you say that, I have an idea of what that means. So for people listening, what did you discover?
Oh, I found that greed rules chicken. I guess all industrial farming. They want to make pounds, to sell by the pound, to make profit. They're driven by strictly profit, not by any other one thing at all. The conditions that animals grow up in and are prepared to be slaughtered is atrocious. And therefore they give them antibiotics to keep them alive until they can gain enough weight they can slaughter. And it's just it's steroids to make them grow faster. They feed them pounds and pounds and pounds and pounds of food that they're really not supposed to eat. You know, have you ever seen a cow grazing out in a wheat field, or cornfield, or soybean field? No, they eat grass. You know,
Right.
and through that grass they pick up the omega-3s that the sun gives that green grass in all green plants. And that omega-3, when you eat a steak, should be passed on to you. But when you're put in a feeder lot at a year of age and you're 500 pounds, and they just dump grain in on you all day long, you can't move, you can't go anywhere until you're 1,100 pounds, and then they can slaughter you. In the meantime, you're standing in your own poop up to your knees. It's atrocious. It's truly, I don't want my steak raised like that.
I don't either.
And I'm not going to eat those steaks.
So, well, I got to thank you for raising chickens and you know, being involved with people who are raising steak the way we want to eat them. So thank you for that. You said that a lot of these calves that are a year old and they're going from 500 to 1,100 pounds in a year. Without that feedlot method, how much weight is
they do
normal or
they
natural?
do it in months, where it should take at least another year after they reach 500 pounds.
Okay.
And I don't know. I don't weigh mine,
Right.
so I don't know. I just know that at 500 pounds, they are about 6 months old.
Okay.
And that's what you call a feeder, or that's what they call them, feeders. They have two sales generally for feeders, and that's people that have a big herd. They will get their heifers, get the vet down. He'll give them all a shot, so they all come in at the same time. So they all have calves at 9 months down the road at the same time, and you base those on when the feeder sales are.
Gotcha.
And so you get twice a year, you should have some calves around 500 pounds.
Okay.
And yeah, they all come at once. You know, that is handy, because mine I don't have a bull, and you know, it just
Whenever it
sporadic. Yeah.
Right. So we've got people that are kind of messing with nature, and you know, it's
From the very
we're
get-go.
getting out of balance. And,
Even the good farmer that'll graze a grass-fed cow will go to that for the money. You know,
Right.
I'm sorry, and I've seen beef right now is unbelievable, the prices. My dad would turn over in his grave if he knew he could sell a cow for $2 a pound. It's amazing.
Wow. So you also mentioned that you found a mentor, you sought somebody out, which, you know, we talk a lot about things like that on our podcast, where, you know, if there's something that you want to learn or something that you want to be able to do, find somebody who has had success doing it, learn as much as you can from them. You know, back in 2000, I mean, it's hard now to find resources for this kind of a movement. Well, it's not as hard as it was then. So I know it was hard then. How did you find this mentor? Who was it? What kind of things were you able to learn from them?
Well, his name of his operation is Polyface Farm. Joel, I'm not sure how you say it, Salatin, and he wrote a book, and he's also a good marketer.
He's a very interesting guy. We'd love to have him on the podcast. So if you're listening, Joel, please come on here and talk to us.
Yes.
But for everybody listening, if you've seen Food Inc., then you know Joel Salatin.
Yeah.
So,
Okay. Anyway, I read his book. Two people, if you have 50 acres of land, two people can make $20,000 in 6 months raising chickens. I said, well, now, I've been a farmer all my life. We never made that kind of money selling everything.
Yeah, I gotta
doesn't make any sense. And of course, you have to read the book to realize that you have to have 16,000 chickens to turn that money. But you can turn that money on less than 50 acres. And if you can, you know, if you can raise that many and sell that many chickens, it's there. It really is. He's written several books. Everything I want to do is illegal. And believe me, the poor man has been in trouble for about everything you can be in trouble for. You know, and so I went and met him. I saw his operation. He sat right beside me, and we processed chickens, you know, and he's sitting there talking to me, telling me what I'm doing wrong, and doing 3 to my 1, you know, and never looking at his. never looking down. He just has been doing it so long.
Right.
It's all touch, you know. So yeah, he's been a big help. And everybody I've met in this business are more than willing to keep you from making mistakes they made.
Right.
And that's the good part about it. You don't be afraid. You could go look at an operation. Yeah. Talk to the guy that has that farm and see how he does it. You know, they love to talk. Yeah. We do. We like people to come down.
Well, and it's like, you know, before we hit record on this, we were just discussing that when you see people in the markets, there are very few people, you know, to use your word, who are buttheads that come, you know, you're not going to have buttheads or people who are not interested coming in the market looking for this kind of food. And it's the same concept with, you know, if you're seeking out a mentor, if you're looking into how to do this, you know, you're going to have that bond, that thing in common. And it's, you know, it's really.
Well, we're like-minded people.
Right.
We're thinking on the same line.
So you mentioned, you know, how to make that kind of a profit or how it can be that profitable on a small plot of land. And I wrote this down as you were talking about your growth. How are you going to raise, would you say 2,700 chickens this year? So how do you raise that many chickens in that amount of time and, you know, on the amount of land that you have without using that factory farming method?
Well, we do it, we order our chickens before the year starts, which is March. I like to get them the 1st of March. We get 200 at a time.
Okay.
They're 1 to 3 days old.
Where do they come from?
Ohio.
Okay. So somebody somewhere has a...
Yeah, I order them through the Southern States Co-op here.
Okay.
And they do all the order, the legwork. They mail them. They stick them in the mail on Wednesday and Thursday morning. They're here. Okay. And we get them at 200 at a time this year. Last year and the year before it was 100. But in order to get to 2,700, we had to double that. And they stay in a brood house. Okay. Very critical. The first week they got to be 90 degrees. And in March, it's not 90 degrees. So we heat light. We have heat lamps over them. And the windows are all covered with plastic, and we keep them like that. Just that first 7 days, that's crucial. At the end of 3 weeks, they've grown enough, and they grow like race cars. They've grown enough that they can go outside and handle temperatures to 15 degrees. Mm-hmm. So at 3 weeks old, they go outside, and we have tractors. We put 100 chickens in each tractor. Every morning, they're pulled 12 feet, the length of their tractor. Mm-hmm. They get new grass and new bugs. Okay. And we give them ration, of course. And people think, well, chickens don't eat grass. Well, believe me, they do, because the rations drop by 20% just by putting them outside in the pasture. We save money on grain, which our grain I buy from the same people that Polyface does. They're all GMO-free natural grains, and which people like to hear. And I'm not an expert on GMO, right? But I've always liked natural, you know, and that's what we've always had. Now it's not so easy to find natural because the seeds of all the hybrid plants don't germinate. And you have to go back and buy more seeds.
Yeah, and I think that would be a fascinating episode down the road, as an entirely GMO episode.
Indeed.
How do you patent seeds and DNA and things like that?
Well, the first thing you do is genetically design it so it won't reproduce. Right. That's how.
So, well, that's really cool. And I know you're on your way to market today, right? So Maureen from Leap is somebody who, in our last episode, we talked about you know, some of the markets that you guys help coordinate. So which market are you going to today?
The West End market.
Okay, and that's one of Leap's markets, right? So Maureen, tell everybody listening, you know, what's going on down at West End Market?
So the West End Community Market has been in the West End neighborhood since 2010. It's considered a food desert, so people who live in the neighborhood have low access to food, and there's also what's called food insecurity. So essentially means that there's low income and low access to food. About 34%, I think, of the people within that neighborhood don't have access to a personal vehicle. So in order to go to a grocery store, they'll be relying on neighbors or the bus system or walking up to a mile. to get to a grocery store. And so the idea was to bring fresh produce market, produce and meats and proteins into the West End neighborhood to provide additional food access to the families that live there. And so we recently moved into a new space, which is a permanent covered pavilion, which is a lot better than tents, especially on a kind of rainy, overcast day like today.
Right.
And at the West End Market, it's not a huge market, but it's pretty reliable. I mean, it's pretty consistent customer base. Some people from the community, some people from other neighborhoods.
Okay.
And at the West End Market, we accept SNAP EBT benefits, so food stamps, and we also double up to $20 per market. And so that's a lot of vendors, they get a lot of their sales at that market from SNAP.
Yeah, and I think that's a really cool thing that you guys have brought into, as you called it, a food desert. That's a really great term. The EBT, for people listening, I mean, these are basically people who are getting government assistance are able to use that assistance at a farmer's market to get high quality food rather than going to, say, a big box, wholesale club or something like that and getting nutrient poor, exactly, thank you, foods. So that's really cool. So as a farmer, as somebody who's bringing their food to that market, with LEAP helping, then as a farmer you're able to still get what you need to keep the farm rolling, and these people who live in a food desert are able to get.
Yeah, it helps the community too.
That's a really, really cool movement. So Maureen, you mentioned that you guys double up to $20.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, explain that.
So if someone, anyone who has SNAP benefits, they have an EBT card. So they scan the card, they run their card, and so if they want to use $10 from their card, then we would give them $20 worth of tokens, and then they can use those tokens to pay any of the vendors for any of the eligible food. So you can't buy, non-food items with food stamps, but chicken, eggs, produce, any fruit or vegetable producing plant is also covered under food stamps.
Okay.
And so it's, for people who use it, it's a huge reason for why they shop at the markets, because it helps your money go a little bit further.
Yeah.
Sometimes there's a price difference in especially with, high quality chicken, there's going to be a price difference.
Right.
With produce when it's in season, sometimes it's a price difference, but sometimes it's not, but it does allow more people to have additional access.
That's really cool. So are the farmers then, if they're swapping, foods for tokens, then are they being reimbursed by LEAP?
Yep, so
Okay.
we reimburse all the farmers for the tokens, and we apply for grants to cover the matching funds.
Okay.
So we get reimbursed 1-for-1 from the federal government for whatever's swiped on the card, but
Okay.
the matching, we have to seek grant funding to cover it.
That's really, really cool. That's great to know, and I think that's a really cool movement that, if you're able to get behind and support that in any way, definitely do that. So GW, what's in the cooler today? What are you bringing to market?
Well, I've got fresh corn, organic. Well, I'm better than organic. I'm not certified organic, but the only fertilizer is the compost that my chickens give me.
Okay.
And I've got some melons, Sprite melons. They're new, relatively new. I'd never had one till the market last year, and they're about grapefruit size. There's the taste of a pear and the texture of a pear. And watermelon.
Okay.
It's just a real sweet, cute little melon, and it looks like a honeydew. Small. If you cut it, the seeds look like honeydew, but they're just wonderful. And of course I've got chickens, broilers, and whole chickens cut up and parts cut up, and they're within 2 weeks old.
Okay.
So they're ready to be sold and eaten, and they're fresh. And that's it for today.
Okay. No eggs today?
Actually, I do have, but we're doing 4 markets.
Okay.
And I've got 90 laying hens. And you should get if you got happy chickens, they'll give you an egg every 25 hours.
Okay.
Which is amazing.
Yeah.
Mine aren't like that. Not all mine are happy.
All right.
But I usually get 5 or 6 dozen eggs a day.
Okay.
But when you're dividing them between 4 people to go to market, and country eggs, I don't care whether you raise them or I raise them, if anybody buys a dozen of them and eats them, they're going to be back.
Yeah.
I mean, I wish I had 900 layers, because I think I could sell every egg I could bring up to market. But unfortunately, we're like 5 dozen for market, on the Tuesday, and we do a Thursday evening at Roanoke Memorial Hospital from the downtown market. We can't take but 5 dozen each. And people fight over them.
And you said these are layers. What's the difference between a layer and a non-laying?
Well, a broiler is what you call a meat chicken.
Right.
And they're all chickens. But
it's like with cattle, some are beef, some are dairy.
Yes, there are Angus and whiteface, and
Okay.
my meat chickens are a cross between English Cornish hens
Okay.
and black barred in the U.S. Now, Cornish hens aren't small. Everybody thinks the Cornish hen is a little chicken, but they have got a great big double breast, and they are small because they are processed when they're like 4 weeks old.
Right.
And that's not, it's
Right.
a little bitty chicken. Yeah, they don't let it grow up,
Right.
but they do grow, and they grow very fast.
Okay.
My meat chickens are all white. They're yellow when I get them, about the size of a golf ball.
Okay.
After 3 weeks, they're as big as a coffee cup.
All right.
And in 8 weeks, they're processed, and they weigh 3.5 to 4.5 pounds, dressed out.
Okay.
And they melt in your mouth. They're tender.
All right.
You go to your chain stores and you buy organic, 100% organic chickens, and and you get 2 breasts, and they're as big as the bottom of your feet. Think, my gosh. And what they do, it is organic, and it's probably fed right and done right, just like I do mine. But they wait till it's 13 weeks, 14, 15 weeks old, so it's bulked up and big, and you lose all the good flavor, and it's turning to muscle, and it's tough. You won't find my chicken tough. It'll melt in your mouth. It's unbelievable.
Yeah. And back to the eggs, and you mentioned that if anybody's ever had country eggs, then they're back for more. So if you've never had them, just the color yellow, I mean, it's more of an orange.
It's
exactly.
orange. It's not yellow.
Yeah.
Pale yellow is what you get in the grocery store.
Yeah. So and that's all the nutrients that we want you to be getting are in those eggs. So if you've never had
doctor
those,
will tell you, if you know where your eggs come from, they're real country eggs. There's not enough cholesterol in that egg to make it. The benefits of the omega-3s are better for you than the cholesterol that they've been telling you for years. Don't eat eggs.
well, you need that cholesterol. It's a precursor to all of the hormones, vitamin D, and all the other things that we need our body to synthesize for optimal health. So, you mentioned earlier about being able to share and pass on information, and I know that you had an intern last year. So, how did this intern find you? Do you have a program with local schools, or?
Well, no, I have to be honest. My intern was a niece.
Okay.
And she's from Greensboro. She's going to NC State, and they have a little village on campus that's like they produce their own green food.
Right.
And so she's in that village this year as her second year. And she, last year during the school season, said, "Hey, I'd like to be an intern." I told her, "Hey, I'd like to have one."
Yeah.
My intern's got to understand that all I can give her is room and board.
Right.
There's not going to be a paycheck.
That's what intern means.
Yes, well, a lot of times people try to help them out a little bit, but she said that that's fine with her. And she's been a city girl, but she got right down and dirty, and loved it. I mean, she just left last week. And it's a shame she got accepted into engineering school, so she had to go back.
As many colleges as we have around, especially somebody like Virginia Tech, we need to get you hooked up with an intern program so we can get you on a little
that's
cycle.
a fact. That's a fact, because it helped both of us. It was an extra hand at processing and pulling and feeding, And she enjoyed it immensely. Her mother wrote me a note and said, I can't believe she's having such a good time.
If she was here, we could ask her, but what do you
Yeah.
think was the most interesting thing, or I guess eye-opening thing that she learned or experienced?
How fast the chickens would grow
Okay.
from 3 days old to 8 weeks. You know that's 8 weeks, but from the size they are at 3 days to the size they are at 8 weeks, it was that, and probably the most amazing thing was that she learned how to drive a tractor.
Okay. It's harder than it looks.
Yeah, no, she just was thrilled.
Okay. Well, and another thing that we touched on in the first episode that we did with Maureen and Leap, but we want to get into it a little bit more now, is that Leap, along with what they're doing with the benefits at the West End Market, they're getting ready to launch a mobile market. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, so we are working with a number of other community organizations, and we're calling ourselves Healthy Start. So really focusing on preschool, elementary school kids, and trying to coordinate services and bring additional food into low-income areas. And so, in addition to just bringing food, also really focusing on how to cook with parents, how to cook and eat with the kids, and so. Organizations like Happy Healthy Cooks is a local nonprofit, and they go into the schools and preschools and do cooking classes. And then the Cooperative Extension Family Nutrition Program has a lot of programs with adults, and Cooking Matters, and Eat Smart Move More. And so this is a collaboration of a lot of different community groups that are all trying to work on promoting healthy eating. And so a huge part of it was providing access, and so that's where Leap really came in. And instead of going and setting up mobile markets throughout the entire city, that takes a lot of time from vendors and a lot of management, we opted for a mobile market. So it would be
It's like a food truck.
Yeah, so a bus or a van that's retrofitted with shelves, and so we still are in the idea planning phase,
Right.
but so that people could walk in and get their produce. So then we would buy from vendors like GW, and then we would sell their produce through this mobile market to the community. So it provides another market outlet for producers, and it also decreases the amount of time that vendors have to spend to be able to get their produce out there.
Right.
A lot of what we're doing, trying to build supply and build demand at the same time, and it's challenging.
Yeah. But it can be very beneficial if you're able to succeed with that.
Yeah.
As a farmer, have you heard about this? Is this the first time you've heard of it?
Briefly, yeah,
Okay.
briefly.
That sounds pretty
Yeah,
awesome
that's
and
a
interesting.
good idea. I think it's well worth the effort.
Right. So again, before we hit record, GW, you kind of used an analogy of the food movement that we're kind of discussing here as a wave. And you mentioned that you hope that it doesn't hit the beach quite yet, that it continues to roll and build and grow. If it takes another 3 or 5 years for it to grow, what would you like to see, included in that growth before it ultimately hits the beach?
Tough question. I would like to see more people be educated about what they're eating
Right.
before it kills them.
Right.
I mean, seriously, the more people that are getting a clue
Yeah.
as to how their food's being prepared and how much sugar's added and how the preservatives are done, and if you'll just take a little bit and read, you will find that that's why we're obese, that's why we're having cancerous problems everywhere. It's all because of what we eat, and he who controls the food controls the world. Believe me, it's not a money world. It's profit driven, but it's food.
Right.
And we've been led way down the wrong highway
Yeah.
for a long time, through convenience, through its hectic life that we live. It's easier to grab something, it's easier, and not read that label.
Yeah.
But people need to.
I think those lifestyle choices and habits that you just mentioned, I think make it easier to lead us
Way too easy.
down that path or in the direction that whoever's doing the leading wants us to go.
Correct.
And I agree. I think that's a perfect answer. I didn't have one in my head when I asked, but I couldn't agree more. It's education. I'm always shocked at you know, people not knowing what's in what they're eating or what they're doing, and the things that seem so simple and basic to us are, you know, life-changing revelations to people that haven't heard that before. And I think that's one of the reasons I'm so excited to be able to do podcast episodes like this, is to be able to get some of that information to the people listening. And, you know, not only, hey, here's the information, but here are the farmers and the markets and the people trying to get you not only the information, but that food and the resources itself. If you had to answer the same question, before that wave hits the beach, if it were continuing to grow and build, what would you like to see?
I think that a lot of it is just figuring out the hows. You know, like how can farmers like GW make it? You know, like how can young farmers, so an intern, if they really want to do this, how can it actually be a career option for them? And I think that's one of the huge question marks that we really have to figure out. Because what are we paying for food? What are the inputs costing? What's the land cost? What does the water cost? What does the labor cost? And a lot of times those questions are huge, and then it's easy to throw your hands up and say, well, I don't know, let's just keep going with this other model because we've dialed that down.
Right.
But I think there's a lot of promise in small scale and sustainable, you know, food production, but what does that really look like? And I think we have a lot of room to grow, to figure out how we can continue to do that instead of people coming into it. Because, you know, I mean, GW, if he's retired, then that's a different life situation than if someone's, you know,
like you said,
starting
an
out
intern
really
says,
young.
yeah.
Well, don't get me wrong, I'm not doing this to practice. I
Yeah.
really want to make a profit.
Yeah.
I want to be able to show one. That's,
And I think that that's what a lot of, you know, farmers really are trying to figure out, like, what is the model that we can do to make it so that we're not always in the red, you know?
Well, I think, you know, just because we have that other method dialed in, as you mentioned, I mean, I think three of us and people who are, you know, doing what you guys are doing all realize that that model is broken. And it's, not only is it doing harm to the environment and the earth, but it's harming people and our food, what do you want to call it, our food supply. So it needs to be fixed, and I think that's the tough thing, is we know it needs to be fixed, but like you said, we just don't know the how.
Yeah.
So,
well, there's a lot of examples for how it is, but I think, you know, at least in the conventional agriculture world, they talk about this as a short-term movement. And
right.
I don't think it has to be, but I think in order for it to really be long-term and change, then we have to really come together and figure this out as a whole entire community, consumers, producers, distributors, marketers, you know, all of this coming together, bringing the best minds together to say, how can we really do this? Because otherwise it is going to be a fad, because it's easier not to change.
It is. And GW, I guess that, you know, I guess this going from fad or short term to just the way, that would be the wave hitting the beach. What's going to happen if and when that wave does hit the beach?
I'm hoping it's a tsunami, you know,
right?
One of those big waves. I don't know. When I moved back here in the 90s and bought my little 50 acres of land, I have family property, 400 acres of land right on the James River. Pasture, bottom land, we raise produce and grain and hay to feed the cattle. And at that time we had 280 head of cattle. I've got the barns, the equipment, tractors, balers, combine, everything to take care of those 280 head of cattle. So I went to Tech, sat down with them, and said, let's make a budget. This is what I have. And I don't think I'll be charged any rent for it. It's family, you know, my dad and uncle are still doing it. But I need to make $45,000 a year. That's what my wife and I are accustomed to, and we can't get I've got to have that to live. What will it take? Let's make a budget. The guy wrote everything down we had. Man, you got it made, you know. He said, the other thing you need is 2 more farms like the one you got. Okay, go out and buy 800 acres somewhere.
Yeah.
You know?
That don't cost
So
you
that
rent.
model's definitely broke. I hope maybe when the wave hits the beach, there'll be some little farms out here that are successfully learned how to make a profit and growing good, clean, eatable food, and people won't mind buying it. You know, I'm hoping, it may be short term, but I hope during that term enough people realize, meet your damn farmer. You know, go out and see what he's doing. He might be as profit driven as the industrial farmers. You know, go make sure.
Yeah.
Farmers love to have people come by.
Well, and that's one of the other questions that I wanted to ask you on here is, for our listeners, when they go to the markets and when they meet their farmers, what kind of questions should they be asking the farmers? How can we differentiate, you know, one farmer from another?
Do you fertilize? Do you use all that petroleum-based fertilizers? Do you dust with, what do you dust with for insecticide? Do you spray? What do you spray? You know, spraying's no problem, dusting's no problem. If you use the right chemicals,
Right.
you know, when we grew up, I hate to say it, we dusted with stuff, when it hit the ground, stuff wouldn't grow.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
to kill bugs.
Right.
I mean, that's, wait a minute, you can take care of the bugs. You could do it with a soap water solution. I mean, it's amazing. On my corn this year, and I just learned this, mineral oil, just mineral oil, a drop on the corn silk keeps the worms out. That's amazing.
So that's I guess that's the question to your answer is what, so if people are asking those questions, what are the, you know, when you
What
hear.
are you not doing, or what are you doing?
Right, so
You know,
so when the farmer brings that information, you know, comes forward with it, what information or what answer is gonna cause our listeners to turn and run, or what answer is the acceptable answer? So,
well, by all means, anything that would be tuned to organic or biodegradable or something that's not gonna harm the planet or the plant or us.
Or the person,
Or
right?
us, yes.
Right.
You wanna know, and that doesn't take that much. You can find that you can Google it, you know,
Okay.
and find out what you can do for pesticides that aren't harmful to everybody and everything.
Right. So for people listening, you know, when you go to your farmer's market, ask the farmer, you know, are you spraying, are you dusting? And if the answer is yes, that's okay, don't run, but you want to go one level deeper and ask, you know, is it petroleum based or is it organic?
As with the meat chickens, do you give them antibiotics? Do you give them steroids? Do you give them hormones?
Right.
Are they getting any of that? Even though my sign says none of that, you
Right.
know, ask.
Right.
It never hurts, you know.
And-
At least the farmer's gonna know, well, you must have read something.
Right.
You know what you're talking about, or you wouldn't be asking the question.
And also, at what age are they processed?
8 weeks, and yeah, how old are they? Everything, anything that you can imagine to ask.
Okay.
Because believe me, if the guy's doing his job right, he knows the answer. He'll know it.
And they're happy to talk about it.
Sure.
Or at least you would be.
That's like I say, I've never met anybody at farmer's market I didn't like.
All right.
You know, they're good people.
Okay, all right. Well, we're gonna wrap this up, and before we do, we always finish with the same type of question. So, GW, we'll start with you. On topic, the things that we've discussed, what's the most important thing that the listeners can take away from, you know, this podcast?
Support your local markets and meet your farmer. It's simple.
Okay, all right. Maureen?
I think I have to agree with GW. I think that those are really, you know, and really think about it, you know, like there's a lot of, you know, the New York Times had 2 articles this week about the challenges of small scale farming. Like, you know, read about it, and you know, so it's not all hype. I really try and make your own opinions about it, and talk to people, gather information, support it, because you know, I think when you have a deeper understanding, then you're going to be a lot more likely to support it long term.
Okay, cool. Well, so part 2 of that is off topic. If you could give our listeners one piece of advice, on topic or any area of life, what would you tell people listening? Your biggest piece of advice.
Stay healthy.
I
Eat
agree.
healthy and stay healthy.
I agree. Without our health, we have nothing. And
That's
can do
exactly
nothing.
right.
Okay, cool. Maureen?
I would say question social norms. if we don't ever question it, then we wouldn't even have alternatives. We just go along with whoever the power players are. And they don't always have our best interests in mind.
That's right, they don't. So, great answers. Guys, thank you for participating and being here. Everybody listening, thank you so much for tuning in. Make sure that you check out the blog version of this episode. It'll be on the houseofstrengthgym.com website. We'll have the full video as well as links down below with show notes, resources. So any of the things that we talked about today, you'll be able to just take one click and we'll get you to those resources so that you can take this into the next step. If you don't implement the things that we talked about or the things that struck you, then it's worthless. So make sure you're taking action and implementing the things that you want to incorporate into your life and your health. So till next time, thanks for listening.